Hey everybody, and welcome to the Keystone Financial Academy. My name is Elliot, and today's video is all about demystifying the art and science of personal budgeting and spending. This is really the heart of the personal finance topic, and there's quite a bit to cover. This subject will be split into a part 1 and a part 2. In this video, we'll go over spending and ways to save, and in part 2 of this video, we'll go over an actual budget and introduce some software that can help you out with personal budgeting. Before we start, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming financial and investing videos, and if you like this particular video and find it useful, please smash that like button below. Alright, so let's talk about budgeting and spending. Anyone who earns an income of any kind can, in theory, save and grow their money. The three components of the formula are just income, living expenses, and debt. On paper, the formula is deceptively simple. If you make a certain amount of income and you can keep your debt payments and living expenses under that income, you will have leftover money to save or invest. Of course, the devil, as they say, is in the details. Many people acquire debt pretty early in life, such as student loans, car loans, credit cards, mortgages, etc., etc. And it also takes a lot of self-discipline to keep your expenses low. Less dining out, less new clothing, less entertainment. So this video is also dedicated to examining these living expenses and ways to lower them, and generally to budget spending effectively. Living expenses, as defined by financial advisors, can be broken down into 5 categories: cost of housing, cost of transportation, cost of food and personal items, cost of clothing, and cost of entertainment and recreation. Let's jump right in and describe each of these categories and what the typical percentage of your budget each of these expenses should be, and ways to save on each. For our examples, we'll assume that you're working full-time and you're making $5,000 gross income per month, which was the US median household income for 2017. Okay, we'll start with housing. This is any place you call home, hopefully in a permanent manner, which you pay for with either rent or mortgage. How much of your income should be spent on this? Without a high debt load, financial advisors recommend no more than 30% of your gross or pre-tax monthly income. So with a $5,000 gross income, you should be budgeting about $1,500 or less for your rent or your mortgage. In practice, since many people have debt, the rule of thumb, which by the way is taken from the mortgage lending world, is typically closer to 43%. Therefore, your monthly housing plus all your debt shouldn't exceed more than 43% of your gross income, which in this case is $2,150. By the way, when you calculate this for your own situation, don't forget utilities and various other costs of your housing. So what could be done to save money on housing? Well, there's 2 major options here. Splitting the costs is by far the most common approach. This is why there's so many cases of people having roommates, whether it's in a house or an apartment. The second approach is to downsize the square footage of your living space or move to a more affordable area, if it's possible, of course. Okay, let's jump over to transportation now. This refers to either the cost of owning and operating a car or the cost of mass transit, or a little bit of both. Owning a car in turn is comprised of 5 or 6 major items. If you haven't yet paid off the car, then of course you have the car payment, and then you have the insurance payment, the cost of gas, cost of maintenance and upkeep, and parking if that's applicable. Mass transit of course means fares for commuter trains or on a subway, and can also be ferries, buses, or taxis. We won't include helicopters and private jets because if you're commuting daily on one of those, you're probably not the target audience of this video. So how much should you be spending on transportation expenses? Financial advisors suggest no more than 15% of your net or post-tax monthly income. So let's say you're taking home about $3,400 on a $5,000 per month gross income. So then the transportation expenses should be at around $510 or less. Now, it may be reasonably doable to slip under that budget with mass transit. Things can get carried away with a personal vehicle. A car plus insurance payments and gas costs should really fall under that number. Ways to save on a car really boils down to buying something that you can afford. You should also consider a used vehicle from from a historically reliable brand like a Toyota and try to go for that over a new vehicle to save a tremendous amount of money. I'll make quite a few videos coming up on both leasing and buying new and used cars. Now, it needs to be mentioned that transportation costs is one of the several items I'll talk about that were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. People are not driving to work as much. They are telecommuting, teleworking from home, and this may continue once things are over. Who knows? For now, we'll presume you are commuting, and these are some of the ways to save on that. Okay, now let's move over to food. This is a pretty personal thing. Some people eat just to live, and some people live to eat. Included in the food budget are also personal items and personal expenses. These are non-food, non-clothing items like toiletries, over-the-counter medication, and grooming needs like going to a barber or stylist. How much should you be spending on food and related expenses? Financial advisors suggest no more than 25% of your net or post-tax monthly income. For a $3,400 net income in our example, that works out to about $850 per month. This breaks down further, 10 to 15% for the food and the remaining 10% for the personal expenses. Now, something to note here, eating out is not part of this budget. It falls under entertainment and recreation. So, how to save money on food? The biggest tip, and you probably heard this before, is learn how to cook. Basic food ingredients purchased in bulk are significantly cheaper than the exact same thing eaten in a restaurant, while often being healthier as well. Here are some more ideas how to save money while still eating healthy. Number one, do an inventory of what you need and actually will use prior to going shopping so you don't overbuy. Number two, get a membership at Costco, Sam's Club, or other such bulk retailer. If you have the room to store them, purchase non-perishable items in bulk. Number three, always check the per unit cost at a supermarket and comparison shop. Number four, always get generic items unless you have a need for a specific brand. Generics are usually, but not always, equivalent to brand names, but are always cheaper. Store brands can easily be substituted when buying things like pasta, beans, paper towels, and other generic items. Number five, stay away from processed prepackaged foods. They're almost always more expensive and less healthy. Number six, shop for what is in season. Produce that has no business being on the shelf in the middle of winter will be much more expensive since it's flown or trucked in from far away. Number seven, do not shop when hungry. You will buy much more. Number eight, look for sales. All stores run them all the time. Food budgets, it seems, were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic in the sense that more people have been staying in and not being able to go out as much due to all the restrictions for dining out. This is more or less a net positive in the sense that people have learned how to cook again or relearned how to cook. And when it comes to this, the future is again unknown, but there's a good chance of people being people and enjoying dining out that when things get back to normal, we'll again go back to less cooking and more dining out. Okay, let's move on to clothing now, and this is also kind of a personal thing. You only need a small amount of clothing, adjusted seasonally, but many people want a lot more in their wardrobe. So how much should you be spending on clothing in a given month? Financial advisors typically quote no more than 5% of your net or post-tax income per month. So for a $3,400 net income, it should be about $170 per month for clothing and shoes. That may or may not be close to what you already spent anyway, and you certainly don't need to spend that amount each and every month. Statistically, that's actually pretty close to what a person in the 25 through 34 age group spends, which happens to be $161 per month on average. This still adds up to about $2,000 per year for the average American, so if you're not the fashion conscious type or you live in a warm climate, this may be a place to save a few bucks. There are many ways to save on clothing, but the most basic advice is the best. Buy simple, sturdy, non-designer labels and take care of what you own. You will save money up front and over the long haul as items wear out longer. You may have noticed that quite a few millionaires have just stuck to jeans and a turtleneck or t-shirt as their go-to outfit. The more formal clothes are more prominent in Wall Street, banking, insurance industry, entertainment industry to some extent, but for most of us it's probably not needed to spend that much money on fancy clothing. I'll list out a few more common sense money-saving ideas with clothing, but before that, it should be mentioned that this is yet another category that was affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. People are working from home, telecommuting, and they're just not buying the fancy clothes that they used to buy for work. It's gotten to the point where chains like Men's Warehouse are in trouble because people aren't buying the suits and the pants and dress shirts and ties. So if this trend continues after the pandemic, the basic rules of what you spend for clothing may end up changing. Okay, so here's a few other money-saving ideas. Number one, buy clothing out of season. While the choices are more limited, the cost savings are tremendous. Number 2, if you don't mind used clothing, shop at thrift stores. For some, this is a major part of their style. Number 3, shop sales and online clearances, especially after the season ends. Skip outlets, they are usually pretty pricey. Number 4, rent once in a while items like tuxedos, some suits, and dresses. They can all be rented for an occasion. Number 5, avoid dry clean only clothing items. You will keep on paying for them long after purchase. Number 6, sell off used and no longer wanted clothing to thrift or consignment stores. Number 7, take fixes to a tailor. Don't just throw something away for a minor fix. Okay, now let's move on to the very last category, entertainment and recreation, or E&R. This includes all going out activities, eating in restaurants, going to movie theaters, drinking in bars, and travel in general. It also includes going to concerts and sporting events, participating in sports like skiing or golf, and also TV and cable costs, internet costs, subscription services to digital and non-digital media, video games, and much, much more. This can take up a huge chunk of a person's budget if not controlled carefully. Now, this part of the personal budget got hit by far the most in the pandemic. There's been countless closures of sporting and entertainment events, concerts, games, museums have closed, theaters, just about anything you can think of where people gathered is pretty much out for now. But that also means that some of the entertainment moved online. Video games are still booming, streaming of movies and shows is still booming. So if you want to run up an entertainment budget, you still can. So how much should one be spending on E&R? Financial advisors recommend no more than 5 to 10% of your net monthly income. So for $3,400 net income in our example, that's somewhere from $170 to $340 per month. E&R is classified as discretionary income and the only such category we covered so far. Discretionary income is all the net income that's left over after all the necessities such as housing, food, clothing, insurance, and transportation are paid for. This money could be saved and invested or spent on things like E&R or to pay down debt. As you can probably see, this is why paying down debt is so difficult. You can't forego paying the necessities, so paying down debt competes directly with your entertainment and recreation budget, and often people choose that route versus paying off the debt. Add to this the fact that for many people, they kind of push the E&R budget above the 10%, and that is definitely a recipe for financial problems. What could be done to lower your cost here? As it turns out, quite a bit, but it does depend on your personal views, philosophy, values, and discipline. Here are just some ideas for keeping those E&R costs down while still not living like a hermit. Number 1, cable. Get rid of it if you haven't already. There are dozens of streaming alternatives. Number 2, drinking. Make a habit of getting to a venue for happy hour for both drink and food discounts. Number 3, food. You can get steep discounts on gift certificates on sites like restaurants.com. 4, live music. All cities have a number of free events during the warm months. Number 5, movies. Attend matinees or wait until the movie gets released on DVD or streamed on Netflix. Number 6, music. Buy songs, not entire albums, or skip buying completely and stream on YouTube. Number 7, outdoors. Camp in the national parks, skipping the man-made world completely. Number 8, ski resorts and amusement parks. Get season tickets to save an enormous amount. Number 9, sports. Attend minor league or amateur events for a fraction of the cost of the majors. And finally, number 10, zoos and museums. Almost all offer discounts on off days, usually Monday to Thursday. So these are the essential facts on budgeting and spending. In part 2 of this video, we'll take a look at an actual typical budget and also take a look at some of the software that can help you make a budget and stick to it. As always, be sure to subscribe to this channel. There's a lot more useful videos on investing and finance coming up. And if you like this particular video and found it useful, please smash that like button below. And finally, let me know in the comments below what savings approaches you've tried with the various categories and also what other topics you'd like to see me cover in more detail. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all soon.